Well, greetings. My name is Mike Graen. Welcome to another Conversations on Retail and the University of Arkansas Supply Chain Management Department. Focus on on-shelf availability. I am super excited today to welcome my good friend Paul Baboian from Zebra Technologies. Obviously, Zebra is a industry leader in lots of different applications, lots of different technologies, but today we're going to be focusing primarily on the RFID technology to talk about how you specifically leverage some of these solutions in retail. My name is Mike Graen, and I appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with you. Before we get started too far into this, I want to introduce my good friend Paul Baboian. Paul is in the incredibly warm town of Chicago, Illinois. Paul, what's the temperature there right now?
About 10.
About 10. And he just got back from a little bit of family time in Florida. What was the temperature down there, Paul?
Oh, about 75.
You went the wrong way. You went the wrong way, for sure. So, Paul, give us a little background on yourself. I know you've been with Motorola and then Zebra and in this space for a long time. So how about a little introduction about yourself and kind of your role at Zebra?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Mike. Pleasure to be here. I've been supporting RFID projects for virtually all of my career. In the 90s, I was more on the industrial factory automation side and really focused on semiconductor and electronics manufacturing when the majority of electronics and semiconductors were manufactured here in the States and leveraging more of a proprietary RFID system. And then in the early 2000s, when the DoD and Walmart, made a big splash with EPC RFID, this, new technology disruptor in terms of a very low-cost RFID solution, I joined on with Zebra and supported all of the Walmart, primarily the Walmart suppliers, and that was my first entry into the passive RFID and expensive interoperable systems. And since then have been supporting manufacturers and transportation and logistics companies. And within the last 5 years or so, I have strictly been supporting retailers. So stores and distribution centers. So a lot of experience in terms of supporting implementations out there. So glad to be with you today. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad to finally find somebody who's actually been in the RFID space longer than I have. I got involved in about 2005 when Walmart and P&G started talking about leveraging RFID at the case and pallet level. I didn't realize you actually had experience before that. That's tremendous. Yeah. That's tremendous. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started with this. And the first, just as an introductory, we're going to have the folks on the line who are interested in questions. Just raise your hand or put something in the chat function. Matt and myself will be kind of monitoring that chat function for any questions that you guys may have, and we will certainly give you an opportunity to answer the question via chat. If you'd prefer to ask your question live, just raise your hand, and again, Matt or I will unmute you and allow you to ask your questions directly from Paul. Just want to again thank for Conversations on Retail, a great platform for sharing information about the retail platform. This one happens to be on-shelf availability, but Matt has done a great job of building out lots of different things, and you can go see his website. For that, Conversations on Retail. And then, of course, the University of Arkansas, the #1 Gartner-rated undergraduate supply chain department. I always have to plug that for the folks at the University of Arkansas. But our two LinkedIn profiles, myself and Paul's, are right below. And without further ado, we're just going to kind of go into what we want to talk about here. So before we jump into the actual content of RFID, Paul, I have a personal question that I love to ask my guests, because in addition to a retail supply chain and RFID expert, you're also a customer, and you order things from stores, you order stuff online. Tell me about a time over the last, three to 6 months where you were disappointed by a potential purchase as a customer. tell me a little bit about what happened. You don't have to name the retailer if it was a bad experience or if it was a good experience, but this whole idea of that we are actually customers as well, I think is really important. And it's always interesting to hear what kind of experiences my guests have had.
There's one in particular I could think of, which was before Thanksgiving, and it's a fairly well-known housewares retailer, where we were having a family get together, and we needed to replace some glasses, and we ordered from the retailer, local store, online, and they're not right down the street, so it was a drive to head out that way, and did a little bit of shopping at a few other stores nearby, and stopped by that retailer. And oh, by the way, when we were online shopping, the products were available. They indicated that they were available, the line items, and so when I went in the store to pick them up, I showed the email and said, "Hey, I've got this order. It should be in the queue, but I ordered a few hours ago. I assume they'd be ready by now." So they went and looked and came back and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, we don't have those, in stock." And I was like, "Well, when I was online and I ordered them, they were available." And they just apologized and said, "Well, we bring them in from other stores, so it doesn't mean that they're here in the store." And that was really disappointing. Maybe because I was a bit spoiled at some of the other retailers that do a better job and focus more on what's in their store inventory. But yeah, that was disappointing. And of course, we had our get together, and we were missing some glasses, so we couldn't get them in time.
Not a good experience.
Not a good experience. No, very, very disappointing.
Very disappointing. I've yet to ask that question yet where somebody's given me a tremendous experience. It's usually always a negative experience. So
I had some, during COVID, while a lot of retailers, weren't quite there yet, I had some really good experiences, at a number of different retailers. I don't do it now so much, but, during that time, being in a parking slot and waiting for my, delivery, it was impressive. So there are a lot of retailers, that are getting it right. But boy,
yeah,
when you get disappointed like that, you remember.
Well, I don't think that could be a better segue to the slide that I'm about to show, because the world's biggest retailer feels your pain. I've got a quote here from Doug McMillon. Mr. Sam actually had one like this as before, but this one's a more recent one from Doug McMillon, the CEO of Walmart. It's really simple. If you're not meeting the wants and the needs of the customer, you're done. There's not a lot of loyalty there. Because I would imagine, Paul, with whatever retailer you were doing business with, if there was another option for another retailer, you wanted those glasses and you would have found a way to get those glasses. So I think people don't have loyalty to a specific retailer anymore. They have loyalty to the products that they want. So with that as a backdrop, what I think is really important is to speak a little bit about the business drivers behind this technology. And I've showed these before, but I think they're always worthwhile looking at. IHL a few years ago did one that says retailers are missing out on $1 trillion in sales because they don't have what on hand, what the customers want to buy. Amazon Prime facing empty shelves are 52 Prime members are 52% more likely to take out their phones and buy what they need online. And what's ironic is you're actually using the retailer Wi-Fi to order it from another competitor, which I think is a little bit ironic. And then lastly, 24% of Amazon's current retail comes from customers who try and buy it. I've shared these before, but I always think they're worthwhile doing. I've also updated this one. So this one's a pretty interesting one. This is from Insider Intelligence. The box on the left-hand side is the percentage of retail sales that's coming from e-commerce. And e-commerce could be buy it online, have it delivered to your home, buy it online, pick it up in store, otherwise known as BOPUS. There's a term, Paul, that the Bill Hargrave from the University of Memphis has coined called ROPUS, which I think is interesting, which is research online pick up in store. That's where you look online to see if it's available and then drive to the store. You may not place the order, but you actually do the research ahead of time before you go to the store. As you can see on the right-hand side, and this is the new one, it's continuing to grow. These are the percentages of growth in these various categories that are going to be doing online. So that doesn't mean retail stores are no longer going to exist. They absolutely are, but they are also going to turn into more fulfillment center kind of opportunities. And in order to be able to do that, you definitely have to know what you have and where it's located. And again, I'll share this last screen and then open it up for Paul for a couple of comments here. But this kind of inventory accuracy, where it says the store says I have on the top one 4, and I actually have 4. If those would have been your glasses, Paul, we would have been fine, right? It said you have 4, you ordered 4, we're all good. The problem is too many times we are thinking we have, and like the bottom one, 3 pairs of jeans, and we actually don't have any at all, and therefore you buy them online, and then you go to pick them up, I'm saying, we're sorry, we can't find them. Not only do you not sell them, but because the reorder point is 2 over the right-hand side, when it comes back to 2, I'll order more from the supplier. Well, guess what? It's never going to go down to 2 because the on-hand thinks I have 3. I don't have any, so I'm not going to sell any. I'm not going to order any. So that is the game that we are focusing on from a retail perspective, and obviously apparel is part of that. But we're seeing, Paul, we're seeing some companies kind of expand outside of apparel. Correct?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yep.
Categories are expanding quite a bit.
Well, Paul was nice enough to send me this slide. I think this is really a good slide, and he actually just updated it with a couple of things. Paul, walk us through this. What are some of the retail trends that you're seeing in the industry?
Well, I won't go through each one. I think you can, take a read through these, but I'm going to pick out a few that I think, there's a lot of insight. First off, in terms of the customer experience, really in today's, marketplace, the retailers, the ability to compete in today's world with the customers, you have to expose accurate, inventory onto your web or within your application, because as you mentioned earlier, customers, a lot of sophisticated customers are utilizing their phone while they're in the store and they're looking for information. Or prior to going to the store, they want to know which store has that inventory, as my experience. So that loyalty, the loyal customers, is definitely the fusion of being in the store and leveraging that data and needing accurate data. That's really a retailer's right to play. And if they're not doing that, then they're not on equal footing with others out there, the more advanced that are doing it. That's number one. And number two, we'll just talk about the e-commerce picks. I think now that a lot of retailers are picking from their own inventory, and in most cases they're picking from their shelves, their on-store, for sale shelves, they're actually feeling the impact. They're getting nil picks because of the out of stock. So it's affecting their processes firsthand, which is new, which is really new with e-commerce and omni hitting within the last couple years. The last piece is the profitability pressures. I think, it's now a lot of reports, actually in the most recent IHL report, they indicated that, omni fulfillment is between a 5 to 15% burden on margins. So in terms of operational efficiencies and figuring out what makes sense in terms of omni fulfillment from stores, from a local micro fulfillment center in the back room, how to handle that. Those processes are still being refined because, they need to improve that bottom line. And I guess the last I'll speak about is the theft. This is, recent. We've seen an increase in theft, 2x from 2021. And, the feedback from customers, they don't like the security vaults, right? There's been a lot of vaults installed. There's been a lot of now checking receipts, not just at the clubs, but at retailers, many retailers where you're checking receipts going out. And this is a big issue that we are all trying to get our arms around. You can see there's others, the supply chain constraints, and of course labor not going away. But I'll leave it at that. This will be in the deck. You can take a look at.
Awesome. Awesome. The other piece of this, which is I think really fascinating, which is, and we've said this quote before, but if as a retailer you're turning your brick and mortar stores into fulfillment centers.
Yeah.
I don't know that they were necessarily ever designed to be fulfillment centers, but that's the migration that's going on. And that means you've got to make the product available for the brick and mortar shoppers as well as fulfillment centers. And building on that profitability pressure, you're paying your associates or your team members not only to stock the product, check out the customer, but also to pick product for customers. So that cost from a profitability it becomes a bit of an issue from a retailer perspective as well. Well, from a solution perspective, sorry, I'm going the wrong way. From a solution perspective, I guess the question is, well, what's the role and what exactly does RFID technology play? Paul, how does RFID play a role in helping to become a disruptor?
Yeah, it is, for sure a disruptor because as you can, note, knowing what you have and where it is with little or no labor involved that's a disruption to what has typically been, in terms of inventory accuracy in the back room or on the shelves of 50, maybe generously 65% inventory accuracy to a 95% plus, let's say a high 90s% inventory accuracy. That is a game changer, right? So first off, it's fixing that distortion in terms of what's incoming, what's coming in from the distribution centers at the store, and what is going out. What is paid for, but just as important in terms of inventory levels, what is unpaid for that's going out the doors as well. And that's really key. That's the fundamental of RFID, and the value it provides is the inventory levels. And then, of course, at the same time, just reducing those mundane tasks because of the automatic data collection that RFID provides. It reduces time on tasks, and in some cases, it eliminates those time on tasks. And of course, it at the same time supports omni-channel. So it's, yeah.
Well, what I really like about this is the way you've laid out these business challenges. I believe that all of the folks, whether it's a tag provider, whether it's a solution provider, whether it's a software solution, whether it's a hardware solution, they have to work together. These are pieces of the puzzle. And I think to really lay out what some of the business drivers factors are is a really important for folks to do. The way I try and look at it is a triangle. And this is the way I call kind of the business value triangle. And usually it was interesting before this year, everybody always said, well, it all starts with on-hand accuracy, knowing what you have, knowing where it's located, a high degree of accuracy. I've started to see a little bit of some of the retailers actually jumping involved and actually bypassing the on-hand accuracy benefits and going right into asset protection, which we'll talk about in a minute. But Paul, talk us about on-hand accuracy. I think we got a couple slides here which kind of demonstrate some of the Zebra solutions for this on-hand accuracy. Walk us through what some of these would look like.
So high level in terms of reading, tagged items to gain that on-hand accuracy. It starts out with tagging at source. In other words, RFID tagging merchandise at factory. And the RFID tags are integrated into the price tags, integrated into the informational tags, into the tickets, and it's basically the RFID tag data has a UPC plus a serial number. So that's key, so that we could differentiate the same item, the same UPC, if there's 5 pairs, because of that unique serial number on every item, we can differentiate when we read these tags. And the infrastructure, the reader infrastructure, can be a handheld device that's leveraged with what the associates use today, a handheld computer, or it can be fixed readers or fixed mounted readers. They're installed at strategic locations, at transitions, or over sales floor or in the back room. Or most recently, within the last couple of years, we've seen, we're now trending where we're leveraging RFID readers or on robots
Hmm.
or autonomous vehicles. So RFID instrumented AMRs.
Hmm.
And all of those reads um, basically are pushed to a data repository, and from that data repository, the inventory management system consumes that data. So the on hands are consumed so that we can provide dynamic replenishments or insight in terms of upstream processes.
Absolutely. Perfect. And so when we think about the Zebra role in this,
Yeah.
do we think about Zebra as a kind of one-stop shop for all of these pieces, or do you guys particularly specialize in a specific one of these portions of this?
We we are, I would say we're almost a one-stop shop. So we provide
Okay.
a hardware layer very well, and for those retailers who are more of app developers or do-it-yourselfers, we work closely with them. But at the same time, we have partners that are very laser focused on RFID inventory management or RFID for retail solutions that provide commercially off the shelf um, RFID solutions. So whether it's in terms of inventory scanning or omni picking or replenishments that tie to their back end system. So we are to some degree one-stop shoppers for what I'll call the do-it-yourselfers, but at the same time, for those who are looking for commercially off-the-shelf shrink wrap software because they want to get started quick, we have a lot of partners out there that focus on this market as well.
Yep. So it may not be something you provide, but you work very collaboratively with label providers, software providers, et cetera. And I guess the other question would be, okay, well, but Zebra probably doesn't talk to all retailers just because of the number of retailers that are out there, the big ones, the small ones, et cetera. I believe you work very closely with other companies like barcoding, et cetera. If they have a retailer that doesn't have the amount of buying power, that they can collaboratively work with you for that equipment as well, correct?
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely. Yeah, we
awesome.
have a very significant ecosystem of even independent software providers and also, value added resale partners. So
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I think we've got a quick piece of this, which is actually shows some of the results. And these results, we don't have to read through these, but the bottom line, Paul, you put this together. This is from Auburn Zipper project study. But some of these are amazing. I mean, the inventory accuracy was go back to what we said before, 60 to 65%. Now we're up to 95, 99. It was interesting. We had a interesting debate on LinkedIn the other day, which is what is the expected on-hand accuracy? And somebody says, well, we shouldn't expect anything less than 99 point something percent. And I was like, wow, that's really hard to get 99%.
yeah,
You could probably do it, but there's a lot of pieces. But even getting it from the point was even getting it from 65 to 95 is a huge benefit. So
I would say this, that the genesis of really RFID in retail, the genesis was apparel, and
yeah,
apparel is relatively speaking is RF transparent, so it is very high 90s, 98, 99. At the same time, now a lot of retailers, the more advanced it's within general merchandise or even tagging food. So there are some physics, challenges there. But I would say, on average, what I'm seeing out there, is when it comes to general merchandise and food included, is at a minimum mid 90s. So
yeah.
it's even with adding a number of new categories that are beyond the RF transparent apparel. The tags have become much more sensitive, and the reader technology in terms of being able to read these tags. There's a lot of new knobs that we can turn over the last 3 or 4 years that enables us to really get dialed in terms of reading item level tags. So.
And we've actually got a video of some folks at Auburn would just use it. This is a RFD 8500 device from Zebra with, I believe, your RFID 123 application. What's interesting here is it's counting the number of unique tags, which is the big number in the middle of 285, 286. But you look at the number of tags that it read, duplicate many, many times. So 4,629 tags, it read over 250 tags per second. That's just amazing compared to line of sight kind of things. So we actually have a question from our good friend JW from Barcoding. We hear so much about big retailers adopting RFID, but what is the adoption rate or market opportunity with small to mid-sized retailers? Let's say less than 100 store locations. Paul, any perspective on that?
Less than 100 stores. So yeah, that'd be in the small category. Ideal significant with the larger, with the big box and some of the boutiques that fall into the 500 store or more. At the 100 store level, there certainly is opportunity. They face the same challenges in terms of scaling out. There may be more of an interest in leveraging, for example, the handheld technology and relying on more of the cycle counts value proposition versus being able, to provide the infrastructure like reader infrastructure throughout. So just because of the total cost of ownership and usually the store's investment, but yeah, there certainly is opportunity there.
Yeah, I think JW, I would agree with that. The only thing I would add is I think one of the challenges the smaller retailers have is the ability to influence source tagging. So if a lot of their product is coming from suppliers, CPG companies that already do tagging, and they've already kind of hit that tipping point that says, hey, I'm tagging for all the big ones, I'm just going to go ahead and tag everything, then it makes a lot of sense for the smaller retailers to jump involved. But if you're a small retailer with under 100 stores and you somehow have to influence your particular suppliers that don't do RFID with anybody else, that becomes a bit of a thing, a challenge and opportunity. So you got to kind of balance that because, again, to Paul's point, you can tag at the DC, you can tag at the store. Every time you get closer or farther away from source tagging, you introduce errors of people tagging incorrectly, not tagging everything, double tagging, etc. And then you have a bad, the merchandise. And that's why I think 99% is really a tough hurdle to make, because that makes a big assumption. Almost everything is tagged correctly. Everything is not double tagged. Nothing's missed. All those other kinds of things that we work with GS1 and Auburn on, and so forth, et cetera. So hopefully that answers the question. So let's keep going here, Paul. I guess the next thing is, all right, so here's a couple of the solutions that we saw in the actual video. We didn't see the printer, but those are the ones that actually allow you to scan and print. But this is kind of your normal portfolio when it comes for hey, I want to get started in RFID. Tell me about the various roles that this stuff plays.
Yep, the journey typically starts with the handheld cycle counting, and the associates are familiar with a Zebra, handheld computer that's utilized, and by literally Bluetooth pairing the RFID reader, the sled that's on the bottom with that handheld computer. So the application resides on the handheld computer. You're cycle counting, you're collecting data. There might be a couple clicks in terms of if you're in a particular section of the store or the front of the store or the back room, but you're automatically collecting that data as we saw in the video. So cycle counting, or there's a find it function as well. For BOPUS pickers or Omni pickers, we can use the Geiger counter function. And then for items, if there are returns and the ticket's missing or the RFID tag is missing, for exception printing, we have a portable RFID printer. So while it's printing the label, it's also encoding the RFID tag. So we want that RFID tag, to be the UPC, again, plus the serial number. So they're printed on demand for those particular items. But it's a simple, relatively speaking. To get started, your investment is relatively low to get into RFID.
Awesome. Terrific. So for retailers that have done this, have you, and obviously I know the answer to this because you sent me some stuff on this, but do you have any results of kind of before and after from a customer perspective, from a retailer that's actually you doing RFID? Have you been able to see any demonstrated differences between how they are allowing you to see inventory or buy online pickup in stores versus when they didn't have that capability in place?
But absolutely. I mean, this is a big one, right? So, just specifically Walmart. This is you can see from May of 2021. If you pre RFID, in other words, pre Walmart having all of their apparel items RFID tagged at source, and cycle counting in the stores. Um, if I wanted to order a pair of jeans, if I looked online, the only answer for now, if it was groceries, it's a different story at Walmart, right? For quite some time during
Right.
COVID, you could order whatever you want, and you had some availability, and you gave them the right to maybe change that line item if it wasn't, in stock. But for apparel and now general merchandise, you try to order something in May of last year. The only thing you got was, well, we could deliver it to you in 2 days, but pickup not available at the store. And it was a big question mark. That didn't necessarily mean that they didn't have any in the store. Walmart just didn't know. They didn't have enough confidence to expose their inventory. So if you could click, Mike, post RFID, when I was looking at these jeans now with RFID implemented. This is very recently at my Palatine store, which is about 5 miles from my house. When I look for these pair of jeans, it wasn't in stock. It wasn't available at my store 5 miles away, but it provided me with the ability to look at other stores. And there's another store that's about 7 or 8 miles away, the Rolling Meadows store, where it is available. And it also gives me the aisle location, right? It's giving me specific. If I want to go into the store, I can buy it, or I can order it online and pick it up at the store. So, that is, I think, the greatest example of a pre RFID and, post RFID in terms of delighting customers, right? With providing this granularity. Now, this is a, prerequisite. You go into the home builders, any of the retailers, other big box retailers, and this is what's needed. This is what enables you to compete.
Yep. And I think there was a couple things going on here at Walmart. Number one, they were absolutely in 2021 really, really focused on grocery, right? That whole
Absolutely.
COVID, that all kind of thing. So they hadn't thought about offering their assortment outside of grocery to that. But you're right. They probably didn't until sometime in 2022 actually have their confidence to be able to go, hey, I really do have this many or this many. I think there was a couple different factors why the pre and post were different, but obviously RFID was a big component of that as well. So,
and I'll say this now, there are other retailers that actually expose an inventory count that's on there, right? So there's probably a buffer. They may not expose 100% with what they have, but they're probably pretty darn close if they're leveraging RFID. So now we can reduce that buffer when we got that inventory levels and we're updating much more frequently.
Yep, absolutely. And not to take us off track here, but one of the things that you mentioned before is built into an RFID tag via GS1 standards is the G1014 and the unique serial number. So if I've got 3 television sets, I'm actually allowed, I could, if I wanted to, provide a state and status for each one of those 3. Yes, I have 3, but one of them is up on the TV wall as a display for customers. So yes, I have that in inventory, but I really don't have it available to sell. One of the TVs just got returned from a customer because it wasn't working correctly, and it's now sitting back in the claims department. It's available not for claims, but it's not available for a customer to buy. So where it says I have 3 TVs and my on-hand is 100% accurate, I really only have one that I can actually sell to a customer. That's That's part of the game changer that RFID will allow folks to be able to take advantage of. Certainly in the future, some are already taking advantage of it, but I think that to me is a huge game changer, is the state and status of that item. And not to take us down this, but obviously there are new RFID and tag encoding guidelines from GS1 that are definitely some folks who are interested in this are going to have to be looking into, because it's a game changer from an advantage standpoint. All right, so you mentioned the Find It function. I'm just going to show it real briefly because I think it's a pretty interesting one. This is just again the Zebra app, and it allows you to be able to find product. If this particular tag was attached to a garment in the back room, and I can't find it, it's not in the right location, it gives me a kind of we call it the Geiger counter kind of functionality to that. So, Paul, I want to kind of switch gears here, because a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about has been focused against handheld kind of purposes. But we know that once you get a critical mass of tags in the store, that doing cycle counting with a wand is still very feasible, but you do lose some of that functionality of being able to do it. So talk to us a little bit about the asset protection, because I think it's going to be important for us to be able to look at some asset protection. I actually have a video here, and many people probably already saw this already, but this was Doug McMillan talking about shrink, specifically theft, in his stores, and he was being quizzed about what some of the challenges are with that, with specifically theft. And I think we want to talk a little bit about what is the transition of leveraging RFID for asset protection uses. So check this out.
One of the issues we hear all the retailers talk about is what's happening with theft, with shrinkage.
Yeah, theft is an issue. It's higher than what it's historically been, and we've got safety measures, security measures that we put in place by store location. I think local law enforcement, being staffed and being a good partner is part of that equation, and that's normally how we approach it.
But there have been rules that have been changed that make it not something that the police are going to prosecute, or that the criminals won't be prosecuted below certain levels. Does that matter?
If that's not corrected over time, prices will be higher, right, and or stores will close.
All right. Well, Paul, we have all seen that video. I'm sure most of the folks who have listened to this podcast have seen that video as well. It has been broadly distributed through a number of platforms, LinkedIn, et cetera. But I think it's true, which is theft is an issue. You mentioned it in your opening slides. So let's talk about the way that happens today. So from a typical technology, there's a lot of these pedestals that you see outside of retail stores that are called electronic article surveillance. They basically alarm if that particular tag has not been deactivated. The alarm goes off. But there's absolutely no intelligence in it. It's just an alarm that basically says beep, beep, beep. And I'm thinking honest people will probably turn around and go, what did I do wrong? But obviously we don't know what left the store. It's sort of a dumb tag. And what we're thinking about now is your technology and other, obviously, hardware providers' technology that actually allow us to be able to have intelligence to know what's left the store that hadn't got paid for. Talk to us a little bit about this.
Well, yeah, to your point, first off, the RFID tag contains the UPC plus the serial number. So when there are readers at the exit or at the checkout, in addition to other areas, obviously when something goes out the door that is unpaid, we know exactly what went out the door. So we can get very specific about what went out the door, and looking at, the dashboards that you can see, whether it is on the receiving shrink side or whether it is on the exits, right? The exit shrink, there's a lot of benchmarks now that can be provided. Number one, fundamentally, just to decrement the inventory because what has exited. And number two, being able to track for potential theft detection, right? And it depends on the infrastructure, how that is tracked. It could be that there are these smart exits. Let's refer to the RFID smart exits in terms of tracking what is going out and comparing it to the POS T logs or transaction logs, or B, if there's infrastructure at the checkout counters and at the exits, right, and at maybe other exits throughout the store besides customer exits. We can actually identify that theft, obviously, as it is occurring, but there may be some other interest and insights in understanding maybe where items are being placed in backpacks, or what part of the store they may go before they exit, or how they're being exited now with organized crime. So there certainly is a lot of insights that can be provided for the AP, department.
Yep, exactly. So this chart up above is just a mock-up. It's not real data, so don't get too excited. But this top part, there's two different types of shrink, and again, shrink is defined by as unaccounted for inventory. The first one is, what did I receive versus what I expected to receive? So it's kind of receiving in the back room of the store. That could be from a supplier, direct store delivery. It could be from your own fulfillment center or distribution center. But in this case, I expected to see 428 pairs of jeans. I only saw 426, and here's a couple that I found that I didn't receive. So these were shortages. And then the bottom one is just the opposite, which is what's leaving the store that we didn't get paid for. And again, this tells me that, hey, I found a total of 8 jeans in this case. And again, these are just mock-ups, but 8 jeans that left the store that we never saw a corresponding transaction for. And that kind of information we would never have gotten with EAS. And again, EAS served its time for a long time. People are starting to talk about RFID as a potential replacement for EAS in the future.
Well, Mike, if you think about it, if a big box is doing maybe they do one annual audit. So they're doing one a year. And then they're receiving these items from the DCs, and there's misshipments, and as time goes on, these 0.57% of misshipments continues, 3 or 4 or 5 deliveries per week, and that continues that's distortion on that end. And then at the same time, there's theft, and you don't know exactly what is going out the door. You get the doorbell effect, but you don't know what's going out the door. So there's also distortion on what's exiting the store. So you've got your POS as guidance, your T-log transactions, but you can see how easily over, a very short period of time, inventory accuracy, dwindles on these categories.
Yeah.
And that's where RFID is just, so powerful in terms of, instead of an annual audit, now we're doing a weekly audit or a bi-weekly audit. And depending on the reader infrastructure, the value prop, I see the slide here, in terms of using the wands. Of course, there's value props for using the handheld wanding and cycle counting a day, and using it for the Omni picks, or using it for markdowns, or using it for recalls, or for store transfers. But at the same time, if we've got an MVP, a minimal viable product solution, that includes some reader infrastructure in the receiving area, at the exits, maybe in the BOPUS reserve area, and leveraging the robots for a daily cycle count. Wow, that's a lot of value beyond just the on-shelf, on-hands inventory. Now we can take a look at other value props in terms of the shrink detection, the alerting, so coming in both inbound and outbound, and tracking other more, let's say, real-time events. And then, of course, the right-hand column, where you have a full reader infrastructure, in the back room and the apparel pad, or over certain sections of the front store and at the POS checkout lanes. Now there's significantly more value prop. Now, again, you talk more about, being able to have a breadcrumb trail of how items traveled through the store or out of the store. So there's a lot of interesting insights, that can be gained.
Yeah, this particular slide and the one that follows it, I think, is going to be a very interesting transition point for both Zebra and the retailers that are out there. Because if you want to get started quickly from a retailer point of view, the simplest way to do that is a wand, an application, potentially a printer for in-store tagging kind of purposes, and you're off to the races. You're doing RFID, you're delivering the necessary technology to be able to deliver this. A tag, a reader, a software infrastructure, pretty simple to get started. Now that you've done that and you're doing this on either a weekly basis or every other week basis, or some retailers do it once a month, you're only as valid as the last one that you did, right? As the last cycle count that you did. And so part of this is, okay, oh, I really like what I saw, which is ability to see things leaving the store not getting paid for. Well, guess what? You don't get that with a handheld unless you have somebody standing there wanding as people leave. It's not feasible to do that. So this to me is a very interesting chart because it gives you an opportunity of where are you on the hierarchy from a retailer point of view of what do you want to get done. And obviously, even if you buy the handhelds, Paul, you're not going to get rid of them just because you start to move to an MVP or autonomous or fixed infrastructure. Right. You're still going to use them. They're not throwaway. So it's not a bad place to start. But unfortunately, things like shrink reporting and asset tracking and electronic proof of delivery, that requires basically some kind of at least minimal fixed infrastructure. And this is the chart that probably Zebra shows a lot of times, but people get a little bit overwhelmed with it. Tell me about some of the stuff that's available for retailers from an infrastructure standpoint.
So in terms of the reader infrastructure, everything, 5, 6, 7 years ago, the solutions were really a rector set. The reader structure was, and we still do offer a reader, and then we've got, 100 different antennas that can be connected to a fixed reader. But at the same time, we've introduced a number of application-specific readers or more of reader structures. So we've been very active in the retail segment where we've introduced reader structures, for retail. So cosmetically, not something, that was made, maybe initially used in the warehouse, but in the back room for receiving, in addition to portals or pedestals that can be utilized in the back room. We are now offering conveyors. So it's a conveyor with a reader system inside so that we can read when the cartons are, put onto the conveyor. We can read all the items inside, and it allows us to reconcile with what was expected. And then at the exits, we've got, again, we're very sensitive to retailers wanting it to be cosmetically, let's say, at least neutral or attractive. So we've got overhead reader systems that are meant specifically for the retail, customer client exits, and for even like fire doors or for employee exits as well. So, and again, you can see the Omni kiosk where we've got a kiosk with some antennas that are specifically like for focus reserve areas, and at checkout. We have a number of different solutions for checkout where we've taken basically the barcode scanner and we've integrated an RFID reader right into the barcode scanner for checkout. So doesn't necessarily mean that everything is going to be RFID, where you're reading the tags and you're not utilizing the barcode scanner. That's obviously why we built it in. So it can be a combination, which even today with the modern, self-checkouts, now it's a camera-based system with RFID as well. So a lot of different reader infrastructure solutions that are purposefully designed for retail, but for specific, use cases within retail. Yeah.
So quick question regarding checkout. When you see checkout, are you just saying RFID readers at checkout, or are you thinking about the seamless checkout experiences that we've seen at like Amazon Go, et cetera? When you see checkout here, maybe clarify which one those are.
It's actually both, Mike. So we're working with clients today that are leveraging, a checkout or self-checkout where they're scanning where they're barcode scanning, but at the same time leveraging, RFID technology to read those tags as well. And with some of our clients, I would say it's more in the trend phase. There aren't a significant amount of installations out there yet, but we are literally working with clients as part of kind of the Go Store concept, where it's hands off, frictionless. Our items are in the cart, or our items are a basket is placed in a particular area where they're leveraging multiple technologies, and one of the technologies is certainly RFID because they want to gain insight. And with the trend, unfortunately, of theft being 2x what it was, really the trend is, how can we identify theft or potential theft before it takes place? Can we audit the basket, before that order is closed out? Whether that's checkout, self-checkout, RFID is playing a role in that in a lot of pilots as we speak.
Got it. Awesome. Very helpful. Just as a background, you also have a number of. You also have a really good portfolio. I'm just going to kind of stop because there's some stuff in here that I didn't even know that you offered, specifically in some of the application specific readers. So I think everybody knows about tags and readers and some of that kind of stuff. But this is not to promote Zebra, but I'm going to for a second. You have a large portfolio, depending on the business need, of both tags and readers and applications, as you said before, et cetera. This is a little almost overwhelming if I'm a retailer. How do I know where to get started?
Well, call me first off.
There you go.
But we do. You're right. I mean, specifically, for retail, it is in terms of the RFID technology, there's a lot of growth sectors, but retail has been growing significantly, and we try to tailor our product line, our solutions, toward retail. So we've expanded quite a bit, but as you can see toward the bottom right, we've got some very specific use cases in terms of omni pick tables, those tunnels, the portals. They were originally designed for the warehouse, but we've adopted them into the stores, especially the back of the stores. And we've also adopted specifically for retail over the sales floor or in the back room, more of a grid system so that we can provide the real RTLS, basically the pin on a map type of solution for the clients where they want that value add, and they've got those additional value streams. So we've grown our business quite significantly in the stores and in the warehouses in terms of our product offering. And also, again, I just want to mention that we have a number of, in terms of our software stack, we offer software solutions that are in retail in terms of task management or in terms of leveraging the big data lakes and prescriptive analytics, and middleware, specifically RFID middleware, because when you're used to barcode scanning, your system is used to barcode scanning, you get the UPC. Now, when you take in those RFID reads, you're getting that SGTIN, that serialized GTIN, which is the UPC plus the serial number. So retailers are getting started. They need some middleware that can ingest the RFID data and interpret that into UPCs and counts. And we've got a starting point with a repository where we do some smoothing and filtering, but we've got partners that really focus within the retail world in terms of inventory and OmniPix and others that have got great software solutions that they offer. So hardware stack, software stack, and round it out with services. But it's like the other Zebra products that retailers are buying. There's maintenance and support that our partners offer, break fix. It's all part of most retailers' current ecosystems on the IT side.
Awesome. Well, Paul, as usual, I have about 4 more questions left, and I've got about 5 more minutes left. So you've done such a great job of laying all these out. We didn't get to everything, but but that's okay. For the folks who are attending, I just let you know I'm going to open it up for any live questions that you may have. So if you just want to raise your hand, and we'll have Matt unmute you, and you can ask your question. But as we may not have any questions, because I've asked several of them as we've gone through here, and appreciate you guys participating with questions. As we're waiting for potential questions, Paul, just a quick one for you, which is, what's next? What did I miss? What should I have asked you that I didn't ask you? What do you see the trends going in terms of the future of leveraging this technology through a retail supply chain?
Well, first, I would say that there's a lot of value add in terms of starting with the stores. And most retailers, in terms of leveraging RFID, they start with the stores because of that inventory distortion that they're seeing in the stores. But going upstream into the warehouses, there are the more advanced retailers who have been leveraging RFID, who have kind of are on their journey, are going backstream into the distribution centers because there's distortion in the distribution centers as well, right? In terms of what's being received by the suppliers and auditing what's being received by the suppliers and correcting those shipments that are going out, whether it's mispicks or whether it's because the supplier's carton was a missed shipment, is catching that on the back end. So the inbound and outbound of the warehouses is, where many of the more advanced, or I'll say experienced RFID retailers are going. So that's one piece of it I would say I comment on. And then the other piece, I think we spoke about it, but it's worth just repeating that most retailers' journey, virtually all, start with leveraging handheld RFID sleds to just gain the fundamental inventory accuracy on their shelves and cycle counting the front of the store and the back room, and getting started with a gamified application that makes it not so mundane, right? That's got some gamification to it, that at least it provides some level of interest from the associate, because that store execution, the execution at the store level, is key when it comes to the handheld cycle counting. So it's getting started, and the entry at a low total cost of ownership is key to starting your journey.
Awesome. Perfect. I think the only other thing that I would mention is, to me, what's interesting is in 2003 to 5, the RFID initiative started with the retail supply chain, from a manufacturer
Right.
to a distribution center, to another distribution center, to a back of a store, to the sales floor, et cetera. And what's interesting is what we recognized pretty quickly was the inventory accuracy at the store level became the higher priority, and so people kind of shifted that way. What's interesting now is now that everything is, people are taking advantage of this technology at the store, starting to look through back up the supply chain with opportunities of eliminating claims. Eliminating, hey, I sent you this. Well, I didn't get it, but I sent it to you. That can all go away because we now know, leveraging this technology and obviously others, that you can actually have some kind of a checks and balances about what actually got shipped and what actually got received, rather than just debating and saying I didn't get something or I did get something. So I think that is actually going to be a big part of the future that we're going to see that with that. And obviously, there was a lot of work done at Auburn University regarding the chain integration pilot, where we talked a little bit about the opportunity for claims and chargebacks, et cetera. This is continuing to be researched primarily by GS1. But to me, there's some big numbers on there about counterfeiting and claims and chargebacks and shrink, which is one of the things we just talked about. But it's interesting that counterfeiting and claims are actually higher than some of the shrink numbers that are currently being shared there. So, Paul, I want to thank you so much for you taking your time out of your busy schedule. I know, actually, just so you guys know, he's actually agreed to take some time when he's supposed to be on PTO, but he's been such a good partner that he agreed to do this for me. So, Paul, thank you very, very much. Anything in closing you'd like to share with the audience?
No, my pleasure, Mike. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
Happy New Year.
There you go. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. And Paul, again, thank you so much for agreeing to spend some time with us and talked about what Zebra is providing from a leadership standpoint in the retail industry. Thank you.